Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. I'm joined once again by Brian from Anarchy Models.
Hey everyone.
And we're going to be looking at another set of stencils for the upcoming Kickstarter, or depending when this goes out, the current Kickstarter.
Exactly. So, or if we're in the future, a couple of years, the one's on the shop now.
Check below, you'll find everything you need by clicking the links. So we've looked at some sort of camos, we've looked at hexagonal patterns and bits and pieces, and some creature features. What type of stencils are we going to be looking at now?
Well, these are going to be what we're going to call the edge monster stencils. We've got two different ones ready. The Kickstarter should hopefully feature 6. So we'll just show you what they're going to do. So here's a couple of examples of one of them here. A couple of different colour schemes. Now, obviously, some of you may have seen this type of thing before. It's often known as a coconut crab scheme, made popular by the catgut painting. So if you want to know how to do this with paintbrushes, go and visit him on YouTube or Instagram. And if you're listening, catgut, get in touch. I've been trying to get in touch with you. Yeah, so a few other people have put their spin on it. This is my spin on it, and obviously I'm going to put stencils into the mix. Yeah,
it'll be interesting to see how it goes, because this is a scheme. Obviously catgut did it for Tyrannids and other people did it as well. I've looked at it for actually crabs, giant crabs for Kings of War. I'm not saying it's a laboriously time-consuming task to do it by hand, but you're painting every dot in there. So it's a laborious, it is a
very time-consuming effect, particularly on the larger creatures. I think catgut was doing one of the small Tyrannid biotypes, and he said he counted the dots and it was over 4,000.
Yeah.
So
I mean, having to hand dot those all in.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, on the smaller ones, it's not as bad. You're not doing that many dots, but as you get bigger and bigger, the creatures need exponentially more dots.
Yeah.
And so yeah, this is where hopefully we can help with that, and you could probably use the brush technique and this in combination, or just use this as it is. So yeah.
Okay, so what's the first sort of step then with your stencils?
Well, I'll just quickly demonstrate the basic idea on the paper. So the stencils are going to come as a set of all different sorts of sizes of stencil. Let's move that out of the way. So they'll be all fixed together on a sheet, and you'll pop them off of the sheet. I'm just going to use one of the larger ones to demonstrate here.
Okay.
So you have a stencil. Can we see that?
I can see it. Yeah.
Let's move it onto the black.
Pop onto the black. Yeah.
Can you see that a bit better? Yeah. So you have the wavy line on the edge, and then you have a line of dots spreading out from that line. And we're going to use these in combination to not only put the dots on, but to put the edge for the next layer of colour on at the same time. So I'm going to quickly demonstrate it on the paper so we can see what we're talking about. Now, normally I would start with the colour. If we're going to do something like this where you have a colour and a dark colour, I would normally start with the light colour. It's easier to cover light with dark than vice versa.
Sure.
But some instances you do need to start the other way around, which we'll get to later. And again, I'm using the inks because I like the transition they give you. So this is Vallejo Game Ink Skin Wash. It's not really a wash, it's more of an ink like the rest of their inks. And that gives us a nice variation from a very light tone, and you can build that to a very, very strong tone if you want to. And so you can use that through the stencil if need be. So when using the stencil, you concentrate the dots to start with, make sure those are painted in, then feather out from the stencil, and then you're going to move the stencil. So that's what we've got so far. And then you can either use a different stencil or move the same one along. If you just move it directly along, you'll have a repeat of what you've just done. So you can use a different one. There'll be more than ones of the same, more shapes in the same set. And you can either use the same colour but much heavier, which is what I'll show now, because the inks will allow you to really layer up the same strong colour.
Yeah.
I'll feather that out.
which is handy when you're doing.
So that will hopefully show that we're on the camera.
Yeah, and when you're doing a massed army, you don't want to be changing a paint every couple of minutes.
Yeah.
If you can avoid it,
you could, if you wanted to, just go, light coat, heavier coat, and be done. But what I've been doing so far on these, it's kind of in between these and then a black to give you that. So we'll just do a quick black to show you. You can use, they come with the different shapes on the stencil, as we can see there. And you'll use the different shapes depending on the model. So again, you concentrate the dots, then feather the colour out. And we can get a very complicated looking pattern done quite quickly.
Yeah.
The stencil also comes with some extra pieces to help add a few more dots. So if we, for example, weren't happy with the number of dots here, we wanted a few more black dots, we could just put a few extra in, like this. Have a few more. Yeah.
And it also gives you the graduation then of the transition from large to small, or small to large dots, I suppose.
Yeah, yeah. So, and then obviously we have all, this is the biggest one in the set, and then we go down to very small ones like this. Those will be used on the smaller creatures.
They are tiny, but then also necessary as well when you have.
I mean, unless you want to do these smaller creatures with the brush and then the big ones with the stencil.
I'd rather not, thanks.
Yeah,
yeah. Everything. If I could stencil everything, I would stencil the world.
Well, so indeed, but sometimes you need a brush as well.
So, I know obviously with some of the stencil sets, you're still working out what's going to go into it. Do you have a rough idea of what will make up this stencil set?
This one it will come with multiple sizes, so you'll have let's see, probably 3 different sizes.
Okay.
In the set, and then you'll have extra pieces as well, such as this. But the exact layout is still being determined. But there'll be enough in there that you should be able to do most things. And if it turns out that we need much larger ones for something, then I may do like an add-on set or something. Okay. But there should be enough to do most things that are, space bug-esque style.
You've got a few already finished. You're going to run us through how you actually get it onto the table in that fashion, then.
Yeah. So this is one of the ones I showed you earlier. So this would start off with this sort of technique. So here we had, this is just the stenciling done on the main shell area. These Lobster Warriors are from Ashuna Minis. He's done a whole crab themed army, which is really cool. So this is what the stenciling done, and then once you've done the rest of it as well, done the back and everything, it's been given a very light brown wash, and that sort of tints the white to more of a bone color. And then I've used a like a pinkish sort of speed paint in the fleshy parts there. And here's another model, the same sort of thing.
It really is a dramatic coloration, and you can see why so many people are.
It's a very cool effect.
It's
been very popular, and this is my take on it. So yeah, we'll run through actually painting some now, and then we'll look at some other color variants.
Okay.
So we'll start off with some of the smaller models. The smaller ones are trickier to do, and you may not do the full 2 stages on the smaller ones. It depends on what you're trying to do and how precise you are. When you're using this stencil, you do need to be able to a nice fine line wherever you want it. If you can't get that, I suggest doing some practice. You could draw some lines with some pen on the paper and just follow the lines. And you don't want to be colouring backwards and forwards like this, where you get it really wet. You want to be able to do the paint on and off and get a nice fine line like that, and be able to follow the stencil. because you're literally in some cases just putting the paint along the edge of the stencil, and that's it. If you don't do it like that, you'll get a lot more overspray. But depending on the colours you're using, the overspray may not matter. So, for example, this one, there was black overspray, but as we're doing a really deep purple skin colour, it just didn't matter. You just go straight over it. So anyway, we'll start off with the ink, the skin wash ink. Again, you could use any colours for the stencils. This is just what we're using here. And obviously we'll go for the smallest size with the smallest creatures. And we're just gonna, you sometimes might want something to rest the model on, to press the model down to hold the stencil in place.
Sure.
And then where we have a ridge down the centre of their head, you can actually use that to help mask the other side. So I'm going to heavily tilt the model over and line the stencil up and shoot from the side almost. So I'm going to basically self-masking the back there using this ridge on the model. So just hold that on. And again, focusing the dots, the overspray is then going to get the armour and then do a little bit on the armour. And then we have the pattern there. Have we got that on the camera or not?
I've got you here, yeah.
Yeah. So we have got a little bit of overspray there, but a lot of the time that won't show up when you're doing the washes. And if you do, if you don't want that on there, you want to go have a really light skin tone, a little bit of white when you're doing your highlights, and you won't even notice that that's there. So we'll just do the other side. Again, tilting it over, using the head itself to mask the other side. And this is lots of little paints, lots of little tiny paints like this, building up the colour. You really don't want to blast it on in one go.
I think this is one of the things that took me a while to get my head around when I started airbrushing on and using stencils, was orientating the model. Because when I'm painting with a traditional brush, I'd let the brush move, but because you're using a gravity-fed airbrush, you want to be keeping it.
Yeah, I mean, to a certain degree, you can tilt it over, because
yeah.
there's always going to be paint in the tube there. But yeah, with this, you can use the model to mask itself. If you can't do that, you could use some tape. So we have got some overspray here. I probably would fix that side on his head a little bit using some white as a bit too dark. Or if you are using a very dark skin colour, then you probably don't need to worry about it too much either.
Sure.
So that guy is then ready for the later stages. So either tidy up and a wash, or just straight on with a speed paint and a wash. And the wash would help tint that white back a bit to more of a natural colour. So this was a very watered down brown wash.
But even the speed at which that patternation has been added, even if you're only planning on just going on to the next stage and just adding the tint for the bone and then add the skin sort of colour in there, when you're trying to get 10, 20, 30 models for a unit done.
Exactly. I mean, when you've got a whole armies on the table, the little guys, it doesn't matter too much if there's some not perfect bits on them, because nobody's going to be looking at these. They're going to be looking at the big boys, or especially the even bigger than that models. So you can knock these out a bit quicker and not worry too much about it not being perfect. But with some good, strong, opaque white paint, you can easily knock this. Bits on his arm here and bits on his head here that were wrong. You could easily knock those back again.
Sure.
So as we can see, we can do the very small stuff. We're going to go slightly bigger now, and just show you that quickly. So as we're going a bit bigger, I'm going to use the next size up stencil. So this is the one we're using. This is the next one up. Different sizes. So, and with these types of models, some of them have loads of extra limbs, and it's often a good idea to leave those off. I know with these guys, the limbs are all down low, so it doesn't matter too much. But with something like these, the upper sets of limbs, I always leave them off and either magnetize them or glue them on later. And depending on how you want to use a stencil, you may even want to leave the legs off and just work on just the body and then attach all the legs and other limbs at the end. So working in sub-assemblies can be beneficial depending on the models. So we'll just quickly do the same sort of colour scheme on this guy to give you an idea. Again, these are from a Shunamese Fun Crab Army. It's sometimes good to use the model itself as a point reference. So I'm going to use the middle of these two armour plates is where I'm going to put the stencil. Again, focusing the dots. Then working the rest of the plate. And again, if we're not happy with the number of dots, I probably would like a few more dots there. I'll come back in with the extra dot stencil. Put a few more in that side. There we go. Same the other side. And then depending on the model, you might want to carry this pattern on down the back if there is a back area of the armour plates. So we can just use the edge of one of the stencils here to go under that armour plates. Add a bit more down. I'll probably leave it there and just colour the rest of them brown. As it starts to get a bit complicated to fit the stencil in there.
Sure.
So while you have this colour in, you may want to maybe to colour some of the legs as well, or weapons, or tail areas, whatever else you want to do. You may want to carry on with that while you have this colour in the airbrush.
All comes down to personal preference, whether
yeah. I mean, this is just a colour scheme that it's been quite popular. We're going to show some other colour schemes a bit later. I mean, you could, if you want to, just leave it there. It looks quite fun just as it is. But I think the extra layer does add quite a lot of interest to it. So again, I'm going to tilt the model to help mask one side. I need my cloth to lean against again. Use a sponge or a cloth if you need to help support one side to stop it tilting over while you're working. Coming in from an angle to not spray the other side too much. If you do it a bit, it doesn't matter because you're leaving it up when you do the other side. So there's that. And then we'll just do this side. Making sure you get the dots painted in. There we go. And then again, while you've got this colour in the brush, you may want to do something like colour the tips of the claws and tail in. Stuff like that. And potentially you may want to go underneath the armour plates to shade it in a bit. So now let's do a much bigger one. So this guy here. So models like this where they have these ribs on the back, that actually causes us a slight issue, but there is a way around that. So the way we've been using the stencil so far is we've been holding it on, spraying it, then moving it up and spraying it again. And we can't do that because these are in the way. So the way we get around that is we actually do the black bit first. We then have to put some dots on the black. We then do the brown. And it's easier to just do that rather than try to explain it too much. So for this one, we are going to use the black without the stencil. We're just going to block in the center part of this carapace here.
Okay.
So we're back now. We've blocked in the black, and we've got some white in the airbrush now. And we're going to use the curve stencil to curve with the armour. And what we're doing now is we're putting in essentially putting in one of the earlier stages in on top of the black, because we can't fit the stencil in the other way. So I'll hold that on there. You would get the rest of the shell nice and white if need be. So that's what we've done. And what we're going to do in a minute is we'll be basically, when we do the first brown stage, we'll also be hitting this and doing it all in one go.
So it's given the reverse in this instance rather than going light to dark.
It's just, you can't get the stencil in there because of these protrusions. Yeah, I wasn't sure what we call those, but yeah, whatever those things are, they're kind of in the way, so we're going to have to work around them. And we can use the stencil here to use the edge of the stencil to butt up against the previous plate. So once we've got the white is over the black there like that, we're going to come back in with the brown. And because we're using a brown ink, it isn't really going to cover this black at all. It's only going to affect the white. If we were using a brown paint, we would
it would cover everything.
It would cover everything, and that's not what we're after. So just lightly build up over the dots, and we're going to colour in the rest of this armour plate with the light brown. As we can see, it's just tinting those white areas and keeping that black nice and dark. If we go too heavy though, the black and the brown will become quite similar, which is not what we want.
Yeah.
So that's probably enough there. And then I'll just do the dots a bit more. And so there we've got the transition. Again, we can use the extra dot stencil down the bottom here to add a few extra. Just drying it now. There we go. And this middle section is looking a bit blank. So what we can do there is we can use the same extra dot stencil just to put a few extra black dots on that section. There we go. This helps to tie it in a bit. And then we'll just finish off the rest of the brown areas. What I'll probably do is use the extra dot stencil, maybe put some white dots on the edge of these things
to fade the chimney stacks,
yeah,
or whatever
just
they
to
are.
give it a bit of a variation of what's going on the shell. I might shade underneath a bit to help tie that in. As we can see here, we have gone on to the bottom of the head, the top of the head a bit, but we can easily paint that back in. Or to be honest, that once you've done the stenciling on that part, that probably wouldn't show.
Yeah.
In fact, I'll just quickly show that now. So we've got this section where we've gone onto the head by accident. Probably would be a bit better if this extra gun arm wasn't on there. But when we do this stenciling, that piece that we oversprayed is virtually gone.
Yeah, indistinguishable.
Exactly. So, yeah. And if you do need to add any dots anywhere, you could use the stencil. You could add a few dots by hand, and use the inks to tint. If you did some white dots, you could tint them with the ink again. You could keep going until you're happy, but that gives you a hell of a good starting point if you do want to keep going with brush work.
Yeah, and when you're doing a horde army in a complicated pattern like this, being able to take shortcuts through stenciling on, it doesn't matter then if you have to come in and add a few additional dots.
I think most people will be happy with it as it is.
Oh yeah.
But you know, you can, if you want to, keep adding to it, either with the stencils like I was doing there, or with the brush. But it is a very striking colour scheme, and particularly when you use the stencils, it helps speed it up significantly. And you'll get also a nice organic fade in some areas where you wouldn't get that with a brush.
Yeah, it does look terrific, and the alternate color schemes as well.
Yeah,
that you have
so
there as
we've got
well,
a few
really
other colour schemes
striking.
here. So we showed this one a little bit earlier. Got
Mhm.
a black to blue. We have a blue to orange with the whites in the middle for a change. Obviously, we showed this black and yellow one earlier with the purple body.
Mhm.
This guy here was the same scheme we were using, but I just used like a turquoise speed paint or contrast paint on there.
Yeah.
And this one did have quite a bit of overspray on the skin areas. But I just painted over it with a reasonably dark colour, and it all just disappears, and you're just left with the shell colour and the skin tone. So there's all kinds, hundreds of variations of colours you could, well, probably more than hundreds, probably thousands of combinations you could think of. This is just some that we've done so far. If you do come up with some really cool ones, please send me some pictures. I do love to see what people get up to with the stencils.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I'm really looking forward to getting my hands on this stencil. Like I said, I've been planning on using this exact scheme for some time, and because I'm lazy, it's just been a plan for some considerable amount of time.
Yeah.
So yeah, being able to take even a few steps out of it and just speed the whole process along is a massive help. This isn't the only style of this style of
so
stencil.
we've got another Edge Monster stencil here to show you today. The one we've just shown you, we're going to call Karkinos, which is a Greek crab god. It's actually one of my favourite creatures from a video game I play as well.
Right.
So that's what we're going to call that one. It's obviously known as a coconut crab as well. But what we're going to show you now, this one's we're going to call a Kraken, and it's because you're going to be adding tentacles to your creatures.
That's a impressive looking silhouette.
Yeah. So these are obviously just over a white. Would then come either you do your shell a colour and then do the black tentacles on top, or we're going to come in there with an ink in a minute and tint the shell afterwards. I do normally tend to think that you want to do the tentacles a very dark colour. If you do them a light colour, particularly the tips of them tends to disappear. It's very difficult for the eye to pick it up. So I would try and do the tentacles in the darkest colour you can for whatever scheme you're doing. So like a really dark green or a really dark purple or a black or something like that, I think is going to be the best for this type of scheme. So here we can see one I've just done on one of the small guys, and then it's had like a light brown wash and then like a brown skin sort of wash over the whole thing, over the whole sort of skin area.
Yeah.
And these guys, I'll just show you how these were done. I've done half of them already to show you. When you're using this stencil set, it's a bit similar to the one we've just seen. You've got lots of these loose pieces. They'll come as a set. And you want to use the biggest one you can for the armor part you're on. The reason is there's more detail in the bigger ones. So you'll get more sort of tentacliness for your painting. So
yeah, there are suckers and the like attached to some of the larger tentacles.
Exactly, yeah. So on on all these stencils, you have two sides to the stencil. You have one side where you're actually going to spray the tentacles on, and then the other side you're going to be spraying the gaps between the tentacles on.
Okay, so you've a positive and negative.
Yeah, so you've got positive and negative. So depending on what colour your shell is and what colour your paint you're using, you'll be using one side or the other. So if you have a light shell, if you have a dark shell and you want to put a light colour on, you would use the positive. If you have a light shell and a dark paint, you'd want to use a negative, which is what we're going to use now. So we can hook the stencil under his head, hold the stencil on the back, hold it as tight as you can to the model, and try and be quite precise about hitting just where the stencil is. And again, I'm coming in from the side, trying to mask the other side with the model itself. So I'm coming in from the side, spraying just the stencil. And there you've got the tentacles there. Just needs a little bit extra on the bottom one there. Spray it from the side. That's the head done. So there you go, you get the idea. You just work around the whole model, picking out the parts you want. And you could also use it in other areas. So like you could use it on the wings of this guy. So you use the smallest one and pick out some of these areas of the wings. You need to tidy up the skin section, like the ribbing section again afterwards, but then you do that during the highlight stage. This is just another use for these style stencils.
Again, it's much easier to paint a single colour onto a
It's generally easier to tidy it up than it is to try and paint these tiny little details by hand. I mean, you could do a similar thing as this with the other stencil as well. Like that. So that's another couple of uses. So we go for a really bright colour here to really contrast to the black. If we do go over the skin tone, it's not a huge problem if we're going to use a darkish tone on the skin. And even if you're going to use a light skin tone, having a bit of the shell colour on the skin tone probably just helps blend it in anyway. So we're just going to mainly aim at the armour. And this will tint the black slightly to help tie it in, but not enough that it's going to cover any of it to lose the tentacles. The more coats of this you do, the stronger the colour will be. This is the Wargaming ink again. And you could have done this before the black, or just painted it before the black with a normal paint. I find doing it afterwards just helps blend it in a bit more because it does tint the black ever so slightly.
Yeah, so ties the colour back towards the rest of the armour.
Yeah, so there it's starting to get probably any darker than that's probably a bit too much. I think that's enough. And then I'd maybe use like a purple sort of skin colour maybe. I think that would look pretty cool. Let's do his head as well. Top of the gun. Yeah, so you get the idea. Yeah, nice purple speed paint or something on the other skin areas would look pretty cool.
Yeah, just a nice contrasting flesh tone to go alongside the armoured carapace and chitin of the figures themselves.
Exactly.
Yeah. Interesting set of stencils. I can see a lot of people getting a lot of use out of them. Are there plans to possibly extend this range during the Kickstarter?
Yeah, there should. The plan is to hopefully do a total of 6 of these type of stencils during the campaign. So yeah, there should be enough there to fit a lot of different tastes. And then it's likely to be one that we extend beyond the Kickstarter as well. But yeah, hopefully the Kickstarter should have 6.
Fantastic stuff. These, I think, are going to be the big standout for the Kickstarter.
They're the ones I'm most pleased with. It's taken a long time to figure out how to do this in a sensible way with a stencil. It just came down to mixing it two together, and you don't have the crossover of the colour of the dots as the catgut style has. Yeah. But you could easily do that with a brush afterwards. Yeah. You get the bulk of it done.
It does the heavy lifting to allow you to experiment further.
Exactly. If you want. So, I'm pleased with how it turns out, and in a lot of cases, I don't think it necessarily needs the extra overlap. Especially on the small guys, I don't think you notice that it's not there. Yeah. And they're not the ones that draw the attention anyway.
Yeah, no, it's the big bow titans, the big guys that people take the look at. So if people want to take the extra time to add those additional freehand layers afterwards,
that's the ones I would spend a bit more time on. The bigger you go, spend a bit more time on it because that's the ones people are going to look at.
Yeah.
No one's going to go, wow, your 50 termagants are painted amazingly.
Yeah.
Well, some people might,
Well,
but
yeah.
most gamers aren't going to be looking at those too much.
Yeah, they'll expect them to come towards them quickly, die quickly. And,
exactly, yeah. A lot of those little guys don't spend long on the table.
Yeah, they're in and out as quick as they can in many respects. Yeah. And then the tentacles as well. I really like the tentacles. I was looking at it with the potential of using it on the bottom of robes for cultists.
That would be another cool idea. I haven't tried it fully yet, but I did have the idea of using this in the same style as the camouflage stencils that were in other videos that were coming out soon.
Yeah.
So that might work well as well.
There's a lot that can be done when you start mixing and matching them as well. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So you could use the tentacles and the spots on the same model in different areas. This model here, if we can zoom back into that, this one's actually using one of our other stencils just in the middle of the plate, and then we've edged it with the Karkinos stencil, the coconut crab stencil. So that's used in a different way. There's all myriad of different ways that you can use these, and I'm excited to see what people come up with.
Yeah, let your creative side out, go wild, play around with the stencils. Don't feel you have to be restricted to one type of stencil on one model, even.
Indeed.
Yeah. Let us know what you think below, folks. Keep an eye out for the Kickstarter. All the links are below anyway, so if it's not live now, it will be, and you can join it here. And if it is live, then you can just go and pledge away. If you have any questions for Brian, please drop them below as well, and we'll pass them across. But otherwise, enjoy your coconut crabbing.
Thanks for watching, guys.
Go ahead and check out our other content on screen now. And while you're at it, why not hit subscribe and remember to ding our dong. Go on, you know you want to click it. Go on.